Is that mine? Yep. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dami Solebo. I work for a charity called VOYAGE. I'm a head of programs and the head of fundraising. 2 jobs, 1 salary, but I survive. I kind of feel like the odd sock here. I'm kind of coming from a different perspective. VOYAGE is an organization that supports marginalized young people, specifically sort of BME young people. And I think one of the reasons I've come here is really think about people who don't immediately sort of feel connected to maybe some of these ideas and maybe some of the things that we need to think about, and grassroots organizations, civil society, campaigners need to think about in terms of involving sort of young people who may not feel like environmental conservationist ideas are for them. And one of the things I'm going to do is sort of talk about VOYAGE's history and how we sort of developed programs that got young people really engaged and thinking about programs that were very much connected to them and some of the impacts that it's had. So, yeah, this is just this doesn't look like my presentation, but I'm just going to crack on anyway. VOYAGE is a social justice charity, and yes, we empower young people. We use BME kind of loosely, but we have quite a sort of black focus because of our history, but that looks familiar. We have quite a focus of young sort of black people because of our history, but we have a BME focus. But we are welcoming to sort of all people, but you'll see as I kind of describe our history why we kind of have that focus. So we were formed by the Black Police Association after the McPherson report. And the McPherson report came out after the Stephen Lawrence murder, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, sort of 25 years ago. And one of the things it called for was for police to be more engaged within the community. And so VOYAGE was formed as the kind of community arm of the Black Police Association, really making sure that the police are really involved in sort of engendering very strong ties with the community, developing sort of different projects. We've done sort of structured learning, mentoring, capacity raising exercises for the last sort of 12 years. Before then, we were sort of more of a mouthpiece for the Black Police Association with sort of campaigning, sort of lobbying and interactions with the government. And one of the things that we've done is we've played a really vital role in making sure that organizations around us sort of recognize disproportionality as a very sort of important thing. When we sort of started developing programs, we were talking about issues sort of stop and search and why that was disproportionately affecting young people. And 12, 15 years ago, we were one of the only organizations talking about that. Now, whenever I go to a meeting at a community group, every organization is kind of talking about that. So one of the things that we really want to do is make sure that we get those ideas out there, and that's one of the things we've been successful with. This is just sort of a profile of some of the people that we sort of work with. We typically work with sort of 200 young people every year, doing really sort of focused structured programs with them, or sort of mentoring programs with them. We really want to build a community with young people, really feeling sort of inclusive. We work with a lot of schools. We work with young people who might be at risk of becoming NEETs and not in education, not in training or employment, and really make sure that they sort of remain in education. But also one of the things we want to do is just make sure they're really sort of involved within their community, because we feel that if the young people have a stronger sense of what the community means to them, then it can maybe disparage them from being involved in sort of risky activities, being involved in sort of developing quite dangerous relationships. So we kind of see a really strong tie between their involvement in the community and kind of what their activities and what their relationships are and what their kind of decisions are. And we start working with young people at age 13 because we recognize that exclusions are really significant at that point. If you look at the graphs, they spike a lot between sort of 14, 15 because of schools are keen to get young people off their books before GCSEs. And we know there's sort of a lot of mental health issues that will come into a young person's life up until the age of 14. And we really focus on the idea of leadership, and we define a leader as someone who understands that certain behaviors and attitudes can have significant negative impacts, but who responds to risky situations assertively, constructively, and undeterred by pressure. And we focus on community safety, development, and cultural identity. At the top there, that's a project that we did with a European exchange, where we had people from Lithuanian youth prison and community groups from Croatia who came to Hackney and really learned about some of the programs that we're doing. not just working directly with young people, actually giving young people a voice to sort of contribute into activities that take place with marginalised young people that involve them, but also, make sure that there's a direct impact for young people, but they're actually given a voice into how those sort of programs develop and sort of support people, outside. This is just sort of an outline of the process that we kind of take with all our programs. Discover, participate, collaborate, lead. Some random colors there. I should have probably done a red, yellow, green, blue, but I was feeling creative that day, I guess. But that's the process that we typically have with all our programs. We want young people to learn and then really participate and take a lead in those programs so that they really understand that that the program is very much designed and tailored to them, and then they can have, we're very much of the idea that peer learning is very important. And I just want to outline the project that we did at the top right, which is with an organization called Street Doctors, and they teach young people first aid. And Street Doctors came to us and said, why don't we do a very specific program, a very sort of generic program where we teach young people first aid? And we thought, well, that would be great, but why don't we teach those young people peer learning skills so that they can then teach their peers first aid? And not to be sort of too dramatic, but obviously we're based in Hackney. Youth violence is a especially sort of big issue there, and it has been for the last sort of 10, 15 years. Well, it's been for longer than that, but it's been something that's been highlighted for that time, so we thought that program was particularly important. So I thought I'd just outline that. But the main sort of program that I want to sort of talk about is our program called Young Leaders for Safer Cities. Now, it's a BTEC that we created, and it's really focused on getting young people to develop citizenship skills, really understand about their community. And it's a focused sort of classroom-based BTEC, but what we want to do is get young people, once they've finished the BTEC, to sort of be more involved in their community. And our issues we're talking about, disproportionality within education sector, disproportionality within with stop and search, with police. It was making sure that young people had opportunities to volunteer with organizations that meant something to them. And that's a program that we've delivered for sort of 15 years, and it's something that we don't see a lot of outside of kind of our work. We see a lot of one-off workshops. We see a lot of very small programs. What we do is structured learning over a longer period of time that really has staged learning for, has raised learning for young people. So they get these ideas, but then after that, we challenge young people to do something outside of that within their community. And we've worked with the voluntary service in Hackney. We've worked with different community groups. But one thing we haven't really done is focus on sort of supporting environmental and conservationist ideas. And that's really why I was sort of connected with this particular organization. And the thing that I really thought about is, why is that not something that we've talked about in the past? Why is it not something that young people have told us that they care about? And I think that's something that sort of creates a lot of issues and a lot of questions. But this is a video that I want to show you about the Young Leaders program that I just described. Do I have to press anything, or can you? This is just a nice video for you to watch, so.
Young people need to understand that in order to do great and do good things, you have to be acknowledged.
We started the journey, and to see what we've achieved at the end makes me feel happy.
Increased my leadership skills, also made me learn new stuff about young people and our rights and stuff that we should know but we don't.
For the last 19 years, we've shown that young people can know their rights and responsibilities and change their environment and not become a victim of it.
It would be nice to spread that amongst all young people so that everyone has that feeling of hope.
Right, so I just wanted to show that because I just wanted to kind of outline how important we thought the program was to sort of make a difference in young people's lives, but how maybe it hasn't addressed everything that we're kind of thinking about going forward, and that's really one of the reasons why I'm here. So I just want to talk about what our young people care about. And I don't want to create sort of this monolithic idea of what a young BME person cares about, but maybe it just gives an outline of what some of the people that we interact care about. So they care about tangible issues that they face in their community. We talked about things like disproportionate stop and search, and that was something that young people faced, or maybe they knew someone that faced. And we think that young people sort of care about practices and biases that really impact their education and employment opportunities going forward. And so we thought that that was really why young people, after some sort of hard work when we recruit young people, they're quite keen to engage with us. But in terms of sort of environmental and conservationist ideas, that's not something we see a lot from the young people that we work with. Whenever we sort of recruit more young people to our program, one of the things that we do is we ask them to talk about some of the issues that they really care about, what some of their grievances are. And this year, 5% of young people said that environmental issues were a concern to them. Now, that was a 100% increase for us. So maybe that was 1 or 2 more young people. And I guess that's a little bit worrying. I don't know, maybe it's a little bit disconcerting, but I think that there are a number of reasons why that's the case. So these are some very facetious questions that I thought I would put up there, really just to sort of get people thinking. Maybe the first issue is that young people just don't care. I don't believe that. I don't think that's a particularly compelling argument. I think we're seeing a lot of young people being activated and being prepared to sort of do things in their community. Maybe the avenues to young people are being closed off, to young BME people are being closed off. I don't believe that's the case, but I think maybe there is something about whose voices are being promoted and what the messaging is to young people to be involved in some of these ideas. And the last facetious question is, maybe young BME people have bigger issues. I don't think there's sort of bigger issues than sort of environmental ideas, but maybe that might be the perception. So just to close, these are some of my thoughts, some of the reasons why I think the young people that we interact with, young marginalised BME people, aren't maybe connecting with some of the environmental ideas, some of the conservationist ideas, and really seeing that as something that's important within their community. The first thing I think is that some young people may not appreciate that environmental concerns are important to them. A lot of the ideas that we talk about, they're ideas that resonate with young people because it's things that they've lived through, things they see, things that are happening on their doorstep, and maybe sometimes with environmental issues, conservationist ideas, especially in Hackney, maybe they don't see how things can negatively impact their day-to-day life. Another sort of thought of mine is young people may not have enough examples of BME young adults who are doing sort of productive and amazing things within their community. I think that really within sort of the youth work, one of the things that I think is very important is young people aspire to be something that they see, and when they see positive role models, then that has a big influence on what their next steps are. Another thing is there aren't maybe enough programs, enough projects that young people connect with. Something like ours obviously speaks very much to young people very directly. I'm not sure if there are sort of similar ideas within the sort of environmental conservation space. And the last thing, and very sort of general point, is I just think that young people sometimes need to be inspired about something in particular. So if there are just anything that I can sort of leave with everyone in this room, I think that relevance is very important. I think that proximity is very important. And I think that young marginalized people need a hook. They need something that they can really latch onto, and there's something that's relevant to them. And maybe if that happens, we can see that 5% figure increase substantially going forward. Thank you very much. Oh, and Voyage Youth for Twitter.